Okie dokie. If I can show you an example, I want to show you a couple of mistakes that students made last time that I don't want you to make. Does that sound good to you?
Sounds good to me. I'm taking notes.
Okie dokie. By the way, go ahead and put your hand down, and then if you want me to stop talking so you can ask a question, put your hand back up. Great. Okay. This is what I found the templates after class last week. I felt very accomplished that I found the templates, the Word documents that you type into. These little bracketed spaces here are what you type into. Okay. Last year, this part, the question number 1, and this part about the focused learner were 2 different sheets. Now, thank goodness they've combined that into one sheet, because that was a mistake several people made last year. They did the commentary, the questions for context for learning that you see at the top, but they didn't do the separate sheet about the focused learner. And last year they had to do 2 focused learners. So they did not do that part. Now, let me show you something else they did wrong. Let's see, not this one. Okay, last time they had this as a separate sheet and then they had to do questions. So I just was kind of looking that up because I thought, well, why didn't they fill, or wait a minute. Yeah, this is from last year. So I'm going to get rid of that. So you have it all on one sheet. All right. I'll just get rid of the template here. Let's take a look at, let me make this bigger for you so you can see it. All right. Now this is an actual person's commentary. And notice that these, the A is black, but the B, C, D, notice I've changed them to red. That's because they were in different order last year. So this is last year's template, and in fact, B, oh, I closed it. B actually has a different, is different on this year's document. So keep in mind that the model we're looking at right now is from last year's EDTPA. All right. Now, it says, for A, it says to do all this stuff. It says talk about the type of setting, grade level, self-contained, elementary school, middle school, resource, full inclusion. Okay, all of those kind of elements. So grade, what level school, what type of setting, how restrictive is the environment. So all of those components are asked for there. Your role, in other words, do you teach all the academics, and do you implement the planned behavioral plans? Do you do pull out of gen ed classrooms for supplemental instruction? Do you do resource room? Do you do independent? Okay, so what's the role of the teacher that you're student teaching for? So the role in the classroom. This one, what's the schedule for the learning segment? Is this Tuesdays for 15 minutes, every 6? Okay, so what's the schedule? And what's the primary language for instruction if it's other than English? And for instance, it could be American Sign Language. All right. Now, Janice, look at this person's answer, and this is a good student. So this is where I know, oh, I have to go over that with my students this semester. The setting is a 7th grade science resource room. Okay, so or 7th, 8th grade. So we do know the grade, we do know the subject area, we do know it's a resource room. We don't know whether it's at a K-8 building. We don't know whether it's at a junior high. We don't know whether it's at a high school setting. We don't know what kind of a building this 7-8 resource room is housed in. All right? So I want you to notice that. I teach the Focused Learners Science class. Okay, now we don't know if that's occasionally, are they in inclusion setting? Are they in, now she did say it was a resource room. Is it a pull-out class? I mean, I know it was. I supervised her student teaching. But the person who reads your commentary won't know you. So if I didn't know the student teacher, I'd want to know, is this pull-out where they do reinforcement of what's taught in Gen Ed? Do they do a parallel curriculum with Gen Ed? Is this a functional curriculum, completely different from Gen Ed? I don't know anything about the structure of this resource room class. Okay, you with me? They attend this class Monday through Friday for 55 minutes per session. Okay, thanks for your green check mark. Okay, so we have a little bit, we have most of the details about setting. We've got kind of your role, but not with enough details. We've got the instructional time, but notice she didn't say what the primary language was. Well, they said if other than English, so I guess if, but there were a couple, I can't remember whether there were students who used augmentative devices in that class or not. So we're going to assume not. So primary language, if other than English, so since she didn't say anything, we're going to make an assumption that all learners' primary language was English. So this is an example that I want you to pay attention to. Make sure you reread all the pieces of the question and you give all the information. Now, it doesn't have to be a paragraph. It can be a couple of sentences, but you have to go back and see if somebody who doesn't know what you're doing can understand where you are and what kind of students you're working with and in what kind of a setting. We need to get the complete idea so that we can picture in our heads, and when I say we, I'm talking about the person who will score your portfolio, so they get a good picture of where you're teaching. All right. Do you have any questions, Janice? Okay. Thank you. Now I'm going to pull up the former. I'm going to pause my sharing for a moment because I don't want you to see any student names. So it's going to go blank for just a minute, Janice. I'll be right back. Okay, I'm back. You should be able to see. I wanted to pull up last year. B said, oh, this is what part B said last year. This is the old one. I need to pull up the new one. Silly me. Hang on for a minute. Okay, the new one for B, let me make this bigger. says, nope, this is the wrong document. Assessment, instruction planning, context for learning. That's the document I want. Okay, let me make it bigger. Okay, for this year, B says, if instruction of the focused learner for the learning segment does not occur in a group setting, explain why. Now, group setting can mean can be a small group. It can be a pull-out group. So you want to describe the size of the group. Oh, wait a minute. If instruction of the focused learner for the learning segment does not occur in a group setting, explain why. Now, it can be a small group. So you would put NA there unless you're teaching the student you're teaching all by itself. And if you are teaching that student, and I just said itself, I meant his or herself. I didn't mean to reduce a student to an it. My apologies. If you are teaching the student by themselves, you have to explain why the student always gets instruction by themselves. They're a danger to self or others. It's a scheduling situation. What's the deal? So in all cases, there needs to be at least a small group. And if it's only the student, you have to say that the student always gets one-on-one instruction for this reason. And it has to be stated in the IEP that that's their least restrictive environment for that class, and it can't just be because of scheduling. There has to be a justifiable reason of why that's the least restrictive environment for them. So hopefully everybody's going to have an NA there because nobody's teaching only one student. Okay, now I can get rid of that because B was different. Okay, so most of the time it'll be NA. Okay, question C is the same on yours as it was for last year, so let's take a look at this. Describe any district, school, or cooperating teacher or student requirements or expectations that might affect your planning or instructional delivery. For instance, some schools do Read 180, some schools have teacher's manuals where you're supposed to read exactly the words in the teacher manual while you instruct them. That's to idiot-proof the instructions, so it's it follows the research validated instruction of the program. So if you have any requirements like that where you have to do phonics first, followed by word study, followed by applied reading, or anything like that, if you have any kind of structured program that's the lesson you're going to write your lesson plans for, you have to explain this here, okay? Now, this answer, the material for this course is driven by Ohio Academic Content Standards. Well, all instruction is supposed to be driven by Ohio Academic. Oh, extended. There's the key point there, that the student was being taught using the extended standards, okay? So that's what's different. Most of you will be doing Common Core standards. Some of you might be doing extended standards. Okay. Identify any textbook or instructional program you primarily use for instruction for the learning targets. If it's a textbook, provide title. Okay. The lesson is based, please don't say off of, it's based on the Ohio Academic Extended Core Standards with a collection of material and resources gathered on the area of energy resources. Now, she should have said where the resources came from. A variety of internet and, any science examples or materials or units or textbooks that were used for energy resources. She should have been a little more specific there. Okay, is it just teacher-made materials, or is it all materials collected from the internet? Okay. Then part E, if group. Okay, go ahead, Janet.
On the template you sent us, I printed it off so I knew what I would have to type in and I could really think about it and get myself together before I typed on it. But like all this part between, like here where it says the lesson is based on the Ohio Academic Extended Standards, all those are, and the classroom is a resource room setting with 7th or 8th grade students. None of that is on mine. Have I got the right one?
Okay, let's take a look at this. Okay, this is the template I posted. Does this look like yours?
Hold on. Am I talking? I don't want to talk. Am I talking? I don't want to talk. Let me look at mine. Let's see. Yeah, that's mine. That's the one. I've got the right one then. It's just you must have a little statement. What am I doing? Oh, here.
See these little brackets in each place? You put your cursor between those brackets, and that's how you get information in there. This is the spot that it allows you to type on. Okay, I see your green check mark says you're with me now. Okay, so every place you see brackets. Now, what I want you to remember from the model I just showed you is there are 1, 2, 3, 4 bullet points, and within these bullet points, this talks about grade, it talks about least restrictive environment, it talks about what type of school it's housed in. So even though it's a setting, there's more to setting than just it's a resource room. Okay? And your role, what all are you responsible for teaching? What all do you have to implement? What IEP plans? What blah, 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 blah. What's the full role of you as a student teacher, instructional time? Okay, so even though there's only one place to type, you have to answer all of these bullets, and some of the bullets have more than one thing. So that's the part I need to make you aware of. Okay, so you got a green check mark. You're good on where you type now, because I can totally understand why that was confusing. Okay, on Pilot, let's see, yep, this is the right window. Content, EDTPA Materials, I moved it up to the very beginning. Here, let me make it look like you see it. Okay, this is the way you see it. I moved it to the top of the list. New, making choices in special education. I have to tell you, almost, not throw away the handbook, but almost throw away the handbook, because this, now that they've written one specifically for special ed, oh my goodness, it's so much better than the handbook. It's so much easier to read. Have you by any chance downloaded that, had a chance to look at that yet, Janice? Okay, that's fine. Let me pull it up and show you a couple of things. I'm just really, really excited about some good information in here. And I'd like to point out a few things, and that way when other people listen to the recording, they'll get to see these things too. So let's see, it'll be quicker for me to pull it up from my disk drive. And I'm going to cover up the chat so I can make this large enough. Okay. And Janice, keep in mind that I'm recording for you, so if you have questions, stop me. But I'm also recording for those people who aren't here right now who can listen to this. There are a couple things right here that I want to point out. It says to read each prompt carefully, be sure to respond to all the parts. So that's the reason I just modeled that in the other students' work from last year. Simple, straightforward writing, okay? So write in paragraph, complete sentences. Prose means paragraphs and sentences, complete sentences, not bullet points. Okay, now, this is key information, and I wish I could highlight. Oh, it looks like I can. Yay! Yes, yay, 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 yay. Incomplete, superficial, unelaborated responses will not be sufficient. One or two sentences for each prompt will not contain enough information for a reviewer to understand your intentions, what or how you have taught, or what your students have learned. So if you just follow my model, when I showed you that example, I told you why there wasn't enough information. So if you just do that, okay? Go beyond summarizing. Show that you're able to understand how your students learn, as well as able to identify and analyze evidence of their learning. You can identify how you prove they learned, and you can analyze their learning in valid ways. So this is an overall picture. Okay, I'll stop talking, Janice. Count to 3 before you start talking so the mic has a chance to kick in, okay? Go ahead.
I lost my sound somewhere. I can't hear you.
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? If you're like me, I've got a mute button on my mic, and if I lean up against my desk, I accidentally hit my mic, okay? Check to see if your mute button is pressed on your headset, that is. Testing, 1, 2, 3, testing.
1, 2, 3. I can hear you now. Yeah. Yes. Yes.
Okay, Janice, I will back up and go over what I was saying, although I've highlighted the key points. You have to prove to the person who's scoring your portfolio that you understand how your student learns or how your students learn, since you're teaching a small group, and you're able to identify and analyze evidence of their learning. In other words, you have evidence. You took data, you know what you wanted to learn, you did an assessment at the end of the lesson, and you have evidence whether or not they learned, and you can analyze whether or not they learned effectively and make plans for what to do next. All right. Here's a real biggie. Excuse me, I have to cough. I love this one. Love, 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 love. You know how in school we teach our students, that if you have, why did the horse cross the stream? That a good way to begin your sentence is with part of the question. The horse crossed the stream because. Now, we teach third, fourth, maybe fifth. By the time they're sixth graders, they shouldn't need those kind of sentence structures. They should be able to compose a complete sentence. Only our most at-risk learners might still need a sentence structure to hang their answer on in order to write in a complete sentence. You, as a master's level graduate student, are not to repeat the prompt. You are not to just use rubric language. You may be smacking your forehead going, well, duh, and yet I have graduate level students do this all the time. And the real problem are the students who just repeat the prompt and never answer the question. They just say the prompt over again. My students, are your student, or what are the settings of your students? My students are in a variety of settings. That didn't answer the prompt. Is your student an English language learner? My student is not an English language, or my student is an English language learner. But then they, it's like you're waiting for the other shoe to fall. It's like, okay, and where's your answer to the question? So please, I couldn't believe that I had graduate students doing this last spring. Please do not repeat the question or just pick language out of the rubric to create an answer that doesn't say anything, because it'll score a 0. It really will. So make sure you don't do that. Use examples. If you say your student did really well, I don't want to know your student did really well. I want to know your student got 6 out of 8 correct, and on the baseline before you started your lesson, they could only get 3 out of 8 correct. Give me the examples. Give me the data. Show. I like to use the Jerry Maguire line. Do you remember what it is, Janice? Do you remember the movie Jerry Maguire and what Tom Cruise was Jerry Maguire? Do you remember what he said? No. Cuba Gooding Jr., whatever his name. I always say his name wrong. Do you remember what he said to Tom Cruise, who was his agent? Oh, you're not typing. So I'm guessing you don't remember. Show me the money. Well, if you had had me, can you still hear? No. Okay. If you had had me for your clinical practicum, you would have heard me say at least 15,000 times, show me the data. Show me the data. And EDTPA is saying, show me examples. Don't tell you can you can tell me what you mean, but include examples. Give me evidence. If you just say you did it, but you don't have the evidence to prove you did it, you don't score as proficient. Okay. And it all right, and it kind of repeats that here. So I'm going to go on to the next. I thought this was good advice that I don't believe is in the handbook. It says, how do I select? Well, this is weird. Oh, I don't have the special ed handbook. I've got the wrong making good choices. That's the reason it's different. Let me open up the correct one. Isn't that weird? Here I was bragging about the new one was so good, and I was working off the old one. Okay. This is new in the new making good choices. Don't pick a learner with the fewest needs. Okay? You need to pick a learner that is representative of the kinds and range of needs you have in your classroom. So make sure it's not, I'm getting a text, I want to see if it's somebody in class. All right. So don't pick the students with the fewest needs, because then you can't do a good job of demonstrating how you tailor your instruction to their needs, how you differentiate your instruction to meet their unique needs. They need to have an IEP in 2 or more curricular areas. Let me explain what that means, just in case there's questions on that. That means that you can't pick a student that's on a speech-only IEP, because then they only have needs in 1 curricular area. So you need to do a student you need to have a student who, okay, I'm getting these text messages, I'll ignore it, except I'm afraid it's somebody trying to get into class. Great, Janice, perfect. All right. One of these needs must be on their IEP. It has to be identified in an IEP goal. So, Janice, is one of their needs addressed in an IEP goal? Oh, yay, all 3 are. Okay, but you only have to work on 2. Now, I really like the examples here. They're academics, and they had to pick another curricular area. Well, another curricular area for some students might mean I do language arts and math, or I do writing and word decoding, or whatever. But you also can pick from functional academics, independence, communication, learning strategies, the expanded core curriculum that you saw from that other teacher from last year, vocational career, if they have a transition plan, motor skills, social skills, moving about or being an active member of the community. That's all transition stuff. All right. So I love that they've given us some models. That's really cool. Okay. So they're saying this is step-by-step. Janice, I'm not going to read through it because you said you felt pretty comfortable with the step-by-step instruction. One thing I do want to point out, what the focused learner is expected to learn at his or her particular grade level. You may not select learning targets that are third grade learning targets if your student is an eighth grader. You may not do that. You have to address what students at that grade level are supposed to be learning, and it might be in the, if there's an accommodation for it or an adjustment to it, it should be reflected in the IEP. All right? Be careful about thinking how much you're going to teach. Don't overload yourself in your lesson plans so that you can accomplish what you set out to accomplish. You don't want to overplan for your EDTPA lesson plans. You want to do the whole thing and get to the assessment at the end of the lesson. So don't overplan for your EDTPA lesson plans. That's important. One of the learning targets related to an IEP goal, Janice, you said you were good to go on that. And then examples from different curricular areas and IEP goals, provided on the next few pages. So bless them that they did this for us. Okay, they have all kinds of examples here. Here's a retelling a three-part story. Here's the standard, here's the IEP goal, here's the lesson objectives. Here's the learning target, here's the academic standard, here's the IEP goal not required for the supporting learning target. Okay, so this is a social skill. This is a following direction skill. It's a supporting target that supports retelling stories, and it's not part of the IEP, but it is a skill that the student needs to work on. They need to get better at following instructions, so they're going to use verbal rehearsal. Okay, it's not an IEP goal, but these are the learning objectives for this lesson on retelling a three-part story. So here's the academic part of it. Here's the supporting skill part of it. Then you've got another example on of a functional academic skill primary, reading the signs on the bathroom doors. These examples continue. The learning objectives for that lesson, and then maintaining focus on current task is a supporting target. I love the examples. They're really, really spell it out for you. So here's use checklists to independently complete all tasks of the job site. So this is more of a high school, an older high school student in a transition setting. I don't think any of you are in that setting. Here's a primary, using scissors to cut lines. All right. Secondary supporting target is maintain eye contact with scissors. Sounds like an easy thing to do. You watch what you're cutting. You wouldn't believe the students who don't do that. All right. So good examples. Make sure you have a daily, what are we going to learn today, that I can measure at the end of the lesson today whether or not my students got it. What's the point for today? All right, so make sure you have a daily measurable objective related to both learning targets. All right. If you can't tell whether or not the student learned what you wanted to learn at the end of the lesson, then you're just relying on luck that they're getting it. You've got to know what you expect them to do at the end of the lesson. You might be able to find a whole bunch of standards that support that lesson. Choose only one academic content standard. Only one for each learning target. You can include other standards if you want to in the lesson plans if you haven't overused. Remember, they have to be 4 pages. So you could include other standards on the lesson plans themselves, but you have to select one academic content standard for each learning target. Choose only one. This example, and I wish I had, see if I do. Now, I wish I had to draw the line through. You will be asked to describe strategies used to foster greater independence for your focused learner. These words are extremely important. Maintenance, meaning they can remember it and still do the skill 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 2 months, 2 years from now. And generalization, they can do it in different environments. So maintenance and generalization are key concepts in EDTPA. Also, self-determination, so the student can identify whether or not they learned what they were supposed to learn. They can determine whether or not their answers are correct. They can determine whether or not they met the learning target. They can figure out what they need to ask or what questions they need to ask to get the idea better. All kinds of self-directedness. They can link it to other subjects and areas, and I would use this at the grocery store, and they can generalize to other places. You want to help support the learner to move toward greater independence. Even if they haven't completely learned the skill, do they know that they're wrong? Oh, I got that wrong. Okay, do you have self-checking devices? Oh, I go through my steps. Oops, I forgot to follow that step. What have you built in to give the student independence? Now, I don't like their example. For example, you can model or prompt the learner to focus on cues to help shape a response. In other words, if you have a list of things for them to do, you can remind them to look at their list as they do their answer or respond to what they're supposed to be responding to. Now, what I don't like about this is it's talking in terms of you. Maintenance and generalization shouldn't be in terms of what you're doing. It should be in terms of what the learner's going to do to demonstrate that they're learning this at a level that they'll be able to remember it over 2 days, 2 weeks, 2 months, 2 years, and that they understand it can be used in different settings. So I want to know what the learner is doing. That's what I don't like about their example, because they talk about you can model or prompt the learner. I want you to ask the learner, what should you do? And the learner responds with, I need to check my list. Okay? That's self-directed learning. Okay? You directing the learner to verbally rehearse is not the student taking it over. You asking the students, what should you do? I should say it out loud. I should practice verbal rehearsal or just say it out loud, depending on what academic language you want to use. All right? And why do you want to do that? Why do you want to practice it, say it out loud? So that I remember how to do it all by myself without your help. So you ask the why question, okay? That's the kind of stuff we should see supported in your lesson plan, in your videotape, in your student performance. You proving and justifying and giving evidence that the student has gained strategies for doing this without your help. Even if they haven't learned it well enough yet, they know what they're supposed to be doing without your help. Okay, lesson plans. I agree, Janice, with what you said. This is pretty straightforward. Be sure to address all the lesson plans components in your handbook, and that is on in the handbook. I think it's like page 13 in the handbook. I'm not sure. But it is listed in the handbook. And it gives some advice if you find out, oh, and here they are, they're listed here. Here are the lesson plan requirements. So you can use any format you want as long as you've got all these components in it. Scores are not looking for a rationale or explanation. They're not looking for why you selected these strategies or your rationale based on learning theory. It's good learning theory to begin with what a student knows and move from the familiar to unfamiliar. That's a good teaching strategy based on good learning theory. They're not looking for that in your lesson plans. They'll look for that in your commentary. So if your lesson plans are too long, make sure you take that out. Now, let me show you that on Pilot, under Content, I have put, where is it? Oh, it must be under EDTPA Materials. Let me make it look like you see it. Oops, that's not what I wanted. Oh, by the way, in case I didn't tell you, I got all these. I got these video presentations to work. You can watch them now because I gave you passwords and a different link to use. Why am I not seeing it? Well, this is just weird. I know I put it in there. Oh, I know. Oh no, it's not letting me scroll. Well, this is just weird. I must have put it in a different class. That's strange. Oh, I'm in the right class. Okay. Hang on, let me minimize this. Let me go back here. Now I need to go here. Here's the WSU lesson plan format. Nope. All right. Hang on. I can do this. Except I have the spinning wheel of death. Not sure why I'm getting that. Okay, here's another template you might want to use. I'm not real happy with it. But it's another option. The point I'm trying to make is the fact that you can use different lesson plan formats. Okay, cancel. Let's try this again. Oh, I put it in the wrong place. There we go. Nope, that wasn't what I wanted. Sorry. There, that's it. Okay, so there's two different lesson plan formats that you can take a look at. And so that is in, I must have put it in some other class, lesson plan format options. Okay, one's the right state that they ask student teachers to use, and one is one I use in clinical practicum. So Janice, it should look a little bit like the lesson plan format Dr. Dunn. Yeah. So Janice, this one's the WSU format one. This one's the one I use in the clinical practicum class, which probably is somewhat like what Dr. Dunn had you use, maybe not. But it's there. I don't particularly like it for EDTPA, but I tried to adapt it to EDTPA. So just as long as you have the requirements that the manual has, okay, it has to do these things. So as long as it does that, you're good to go. Okay, great. If you have a planned curriculum or a prescribed script you're supposed to follow for teaching, then your plans and commentary should describe the requirements. Tell how you selected or modified the materials with your focus learner in mind. Okay? Did you use everything out of the materials exactly as they are for the whole group? You better not have, because that means you didn't differentiate instruction. You better think about individual learning needs, or you're not going to be proficient. All right, so you may have given different examples that are more meaningful to them. You might have added more questions. You might have done scaffolded questioning to lead them toward an answer, or a deduction or an inference that you need them to make. There may have been some additional activities to help them learn the task. Okay? Baseline data. Do you see that word data, Janice? Remember the line from Jerry Maguire's Show Me the Money? When you are asked for data, it means tell me the numbers. How well could they do this skill before the lessons began? If you already have that information from your CT, great. If you don't have it from your CT, then you need to collect the data yourself before you plan the learning segment, because you have to know where they are, and this is all the students. You need to know where the students are before you plan instruction. That's good teaching. Don't teach kids what they already know. Don't teach them over their heads that they can't understand. So make sure you know where your students are, and in particular, your focus student. You can get it from your teacher, from last year's records, whatever possible. If possible, whatever, if you have to give an assessment to get the baseline data, then make it be very parallel, very much like the assessment you will use at the end of the learning segment. So the test at the end of the 3 days or 5 days. The pre-assessment and post-assessment should be the same kind of thing. In other words, you don't ask a multiple-choice pre-assessment and then have them write a 3-paragraph essay for the end of learning assessment, because you can't compare the data from those two things. But if they're both essays and you can count number of sentences or number of key ideas or number of supporting details, if you have to be able to count something in the baseline data and be able to count the same things in the end assessment to show growth. Okay, that's the important part there. The planning task requires you to demonstrate your depth of knowledge of the focus student in relation to the 2 planning targets. So I don't need to know that Harry has 2 younger sisters and they're called Sherry and Mary. So we've got Harry, Sherry, and Mary. That's not in relationship to your learning targets. Do not throw the kitchen sink in here. Tell me what you know about your student. What are their strengths? What are their interests? Making casual references or surface level, let me scroll down. Or surface level connections. Johnny likes cars. One of the sentences in our lesson will have to do with cars. Duh, no. Okay? That's casual surface level. Okay? I want to know what the student's background is, what are they familiar with, what are you building on, what are they interested in, what are their strengths that you can use to help them describe where the student is, where they're coming from, and where they need to go. Okay? Maybe in the past they've only been able to select an answer from a list. Maybe you want to move them by giving highly motivating, interesting topics. You want to move them to creating their own short answer responses rather than selecting the correct answer from a list. That would be expanding the skill to a higher level of learning. All right? Give enough detail about your students' prior learning experience, development, and strengths. Now, here's what I think needs some explanation. The personal, cultural, and community assets. Personal. What's going on in the family? Are there siblings that help a lot with the students' homework? Are there are both parents present in the evening? So what kind of resources does this family have? And you need to find that out. Okay, and this is your focus student. Okay, not every student in your classroom. You would as a teacher, but the purpose of this assessment, you're doing your focus student. So what's going on in the home? Is there Aunt Susie that comes over to watch Johnny between the time he gets off the bus and his parents come home and Aunt Susie does homework with? Okay, that's a personal resource. Cultural resources. Is there an extended family? I'm blanking on cultural resources. Is there a large cultural community of people who have things in common in the neighborhood or in the area or in the church group? Or is there a social organization that the family attends where they're around other people from similar cultures that helps the student identify with his cultural background and heritage? And does the family go out in the community? Do they travel a lot? Do they take vacations? Do they go for rides in the car? Do they go grocery shopping together? What do they do in the community as a family, or even what does the student do with a family member in the community? Do they go visit family on weekends so that they go a variety of places? Okay? Hopefully that's giving you some ideas of how you describe personal, cultural, and community assets in addition to their learning needs. Between your answer to the questions and your lesson plans, you should be able to clearly tell what you plan to do in the learning segment to use their strengths and meet their needs. They're good at this, they need help with this, so I'm going to use this strength to move them forward onto this skill. All right. When you describe your student, make sure you're not just lumping them into age. All preschoolers have problems with this. Don't use that phrase. All students from a culture of poverty are like this. Okay? All Hispanic students have trouble or are very good at this. Students who have or on free and reduced lunch tend to be good at this, but tend to have trouble with that. Do not make any of those kind of statements. Can you back up any of your descriptions with evidence? The mother reported. The regular ed teacher reported. The sibling reported. Can you back any of it up with evidence? Okay? When you describe your student, make sure you can back it up with where you found it out. It's not just some conclusion you're drawing not based on evidence. So, make sure your observations are based on what the student said themselves, what siblings have told you, anything like that. Okay. Specific, concrete examples. I feel like I've hit that a few times. Don't just talk to me in general terms. Be specific. When Johnny did the worksheet in lesson 2, no. That's talking about instruction. We're still on planning. Strengths and needs. On the pretest, Johnny was able to answer questions that were directly stated in the text, but was not able to answer questions that required him to infer information from what was given in the text. Okay, that's specific, concrete. When asked to give, you could say they did it 1 out of 3 times, or was able to do it none of the 3 times they were asked for. Specific, concrete examples. Actually, I'm talking about strengths. Johnny's really good at math. Thank you for playing. Johnny is able to compute 3 digits plus 3 digits, addition, regrouping across zeros. That's specifically describing a student's strengths. Okay, be very specific. Refer to baseline data when needed. As you plan your instructional materials, you need to explain, justify why you planned them. Okay, this is the planning part. So why'd you plan this? Based on his interest in. I selected a story about cars. Okay. So how did you match the lessons and the materials to your learners? Remember, do not merely repeat a prompt or rubric language. You score 0 for being a parrot who repeats what's already there. Give examples of your teaching. Your. Okay, here are some examples again. Well done. I have no idea why that's highlighted. Did I do that? Doesn't look like I can undo that. Okay, never mind. Okay, you also, oh, by the way, the vocational model, Sonia is good about using her checklist to complete tasks. No, I don't like that. I think that's bad. Now, if it said, Sonia uses her checklist to complete regular tasks in her work placement 100% of the time, then I know she's good. Don't tell me she's good. Give me the data. Show me the data. Okay? If she can do it 95% of the time, that's still good. Don't use a descriptive word good. Don't give me your opinion. Don't give me your analysis. Tell me the data. Show me the data, show me the data, show me the data. Okay? So that's one problem I had there. Now, I was a little confused with the rest of this because I talked about if she completes tasks early, she doesn't check to see if there are additional tasks that could be done. She did not notify her supervisor last week when she was sick. She gets very upset when she makes mistakes and shuts down. Therefore, I am working with her on communication in the workplace, identifying different scenarios, and using role play and error prevention. I don't know what error prevention means. Don't use it. Wonder how I turn that off. Okay, there. Shoot. Okay. I don't like this word error prevention. Because I don't know what it means. Okay. I think there's too much information here. If we're going to justify the fact that we're going to work on her communication in the workplace, then we want to identify problems with communication. Okay? Checking to see if there are additional tasks is not communication. Now, if it says she does not ask if there are additional tasks, that's communication. Okay? So I want to point out some problems with this. Did not notify her supervisor last week when she was sick. That's communication. Okay, I'm liking that. Gets very upset when she makes mistakes and shuts down. That's a communication issue. Okay, because someone's communicating with her and her reaction to her reaction to the information she has received is inappropriate. So therefore, planning this is good. But, okay, I already went over it. I don't need to say it again. Okay, you need to justify why you're doing what you're doing. Remember earlier I said that you might want to say that the student is already good at or already knows about or is already interested in blah, blah, blah. And good learning theory says to base learning on the known and then move forward to new learning and build it on prior experiences. That's good learning theory. You don't have to name drop, okay? You can cite Bloom's taxonomy. You can cite learning theory. So you have to go back and think about the kinds of things that you learned in your curriculum methods and materials class, in your transition class, in your ed psych class back a million years ago, whenever you took that. You can certainly Google learning theory or learning research. You can look up different. You don't have to do. You don't have to go do Vygotsky, okay? You don't have to do that formal learning theory stuff. You don't have to do Dewey and Skinner and all those kind of guys, but you might want to do some Dewey and Skinner, okay? So you're going to have to do some research so you can cite research. So you need to prove that the order of your lessons, the order of your objectives are rational and make sense and based on good learning theory. So do the research you need to do to justify the order and the methods and the strategies you're using. If you're using a strategy, do some research on it. See if it's based on learning theory. So Google, 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 Google. Okay? You don't have to use highbrow names. I don't even remember what Vygotsky's theory is. I never learned Vygotsky when I took ed psych a million years ago, okay? But I do know Bloom's taxonomy, and I do know higher order thinking skills, and I do know building on lower thinking skills to move to the next higher thinking skill, okay? It says don't name drop, cite the textbook author, describe a concept without making explicit and well-developed connections between the theory or research to your plan for instruction. So-and-so, the blah, blah, blah learning theory says blah, blah, blah. In my lesson plan, I purposely put modeling before independent practice because good learning theory says a good progression is I do, we do, you do. I do it and model it for you. We all do it together as a group, and then you do it independently to demonstrate your learning. Okay, I do, we do, you do is a researched strategy, and you'd want to Google that to see if it's based on anything. What I'm giving you is not enough. But you're going to realize as you start Googling this stuff, you know good, solid teaching practices. Now go find out why they're good, solid teaching practices, okay? So, and then say, I did this in my lesson plan because blah, 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 blah. Okay. Gosh, I'm running a lot longer than I wanted to, but let me keep going. Are you still with me, Janice, or have I put you to sleep? Okay, thank you for hanging with me. And I know this is there to read to you, but I feel like I want to, well, I'll tell you what. Since it's only you, I'm going to stop here. Yes, no. Nope, I'm going to hit the highlights. This is the academic language part. Okay. Academic language deals with receptive language, what's coming into the student and do they understand it? Expressive language, can they respond or talk about what they're learning? And in some cases, there's special words and ways we talk about the subject area. In math and in science, there are special notations and symbols, okay? And they have to know how to correctly use those notations and symbols to write about or express about the content, okay? The communication skill or function is basically the purpose or reason for communicating during the learning task. And examples are they might be explain, signal, compare. Signal would be an appropriate one for a nonverbal learner. They need to argue both sides of a sin, or argue both sides of an idea or debate or question, and they need to be, or they might be need to request information, and that's the supporting skill you want them to use. You choose one. The old Double Mint commercial would say, you get two, click, 2 mints in one. Nope, I want you to choose one communication function. Don't tell me that students are going to explain the meaning of hot and cold and then compare items that are hot and cold. Those are two communication functions. Pick one. And there's a whole list. Let me go back to Pilot. Academic language. Here's a PowerPoint, a narrated PowerPoint or presentation for you to listen to. Here's a PowerPoint presentation. Here's the script that goes along with the PowerPoint presentation. Here's a handout on academic language, and here's an academic language video. And you click on this link, and then you have to use this password, case sensitive to view, when it asks you for a password. ED, capital T, capital P, at, capital L, A, N, capital G is the password. Okay, so here are your resources for academic language. Read this. You don't have enough information on academic language to do this part of EDTPA correct. You need to listen to these. Do this, do this, do this. I see you're typing, Janice. You're probably saying, quit yelling at me. Okay, you said okay. All right. Okay, so read those academic. Okay, now, I wish I could highlight in a different color, because here are all the components of academic language. You have to think about words that they will be using. What kind of sentence structures will they be using? Do they need to be able to form questions? Do they need to be able to describe? Do they need to use complete sentences? Do they need to give one-word answers? Do they need to be able to write complete paragraphs? Do they need to have social? And social use is new. Social use was not in last year's manual, okay? Situational expectations. Those 4 terms are explained very well below here, okay? Here's syntax. It's, I think it's pretty well explained. So you read these, look at the resources on Pilot, and then if you have questions, come back next week and we'll go over them. You have to plan for assessment. So you're going to do some informal things like asking questions. That's an assessment. Can they answer your 3 questions you're going to ask during the lesson? That's an informal assessment. You also want a post-test that matches your pre-test. So that's your more formal assessment. So you have to have both kinds. You also have to have daily assessment records. If you had me, which I know you didn't, Janet, for clinical practicum, I require students to create data collection charts, like they have to use when they're real teachers. So ask your cooperating teacher. Ask other intervention specialists. How do you collect data for progress reports? How do you keep records of student performance on IEP goals? That's what you need to do. You need to have a record-keeping chart. You need to have a way to keep track of what you're counting. Because remember, show me the data means tell me what you're counting. So you need to have a data chart that you're going to fill out during instruction. You need to design the assessment and the data chart and give me the blank one in your lesson plans. Not give it to me, give it to the person who grades your portfolio, your score. Have your data, how you're going to collect your data in your plan before you start teaching. Okay, there's a quick summary. Do not spend a lot of time focused on what the learner can't do. Make sure you are teaching correct content. I had a student teacher last year who incorrectly taught possessives. Don't do that. Make sure that the IEP goal matches the content standard, which matches the learning targets, which match the learning objectives, which match the learning targets and the assessments. Make sure you're all talking about the same thing. Don't talk about an IEP goal that talks about, and I had one student do this last year, it absolutely drove me bonkers. The IEP goal was about learning to add. The standard was on math numeration. The learning target was on sorting object. The lesson objectives had to do with stating colors, and the learning task had to do with something completely different. And the assessment was nowhere in line with any of those things. So every time that person got to another one of these pieces, they thought, well, I can't make it talk about the same thing. I have to make it different because now it's called a learning target, so I have to make it look different. No. The IEP goal matches the standards, matches the learning targets, and the lesson objectives lead toward the learning target, and the learning tasks make sense for what the lesson objective is supposed to accomplish. And the assessment assesses what the learning target is. So make sure this is all lined up. You get a big fat 0 on that one if you don't. Okay. I am finally done with task 1 for this week. Any questions, Janice? Okay, Janice, I really want to thank you for being here because it's so much more fun for me to record a session when I have a real life person out there. It just makes it go better for me. So thank you. I hope you got a little more clarity out of it. I have the recording now for other students to listen to. Thank you very much. I'm going to stop my recording right now.